Hello everyone, welcome to the Azure DevOps Repos, Git and VS Code. So what exactly is Azure DevOps? Now if you take any software project, all software project needs three things. Every software project needs a project management tool, a place to gather requirements, split it up into various tasks, assign it to people, and you monitor the progress of those tasks. That's a project management tool. Azure DevOps has the tool called Azure Boards. So in this tool, you can see this right here, Azure DevOps Boards. So this is a project management tool. Now this class doesn't teach you boards, but if you want to learn about the project management part of Azure DevOps Boards, head on to my website patrickvideos.com, shop videos, scroll down and you'll see the Azure DevOps for project managers and analysts. Take that class for the Azure DevOps Boards. You can see that it has like more than 70,000 students on Udemy. The second thing that every software project needs is a source control tool. So what exactly is source control? When you create a software project, you need some kind of a central repository to store your code, to share your code with other team members. And it should also maintain a history of who made what changes. So that's a source control or a version control tool. Azure DevOps Repos deals with the source control part of it. You see this? Azure DevOps Repos deals with the source control part of it. And this is what we are going to learn in this class, the Azure DevOps Repos and how to work with it. The third tool every software project needs is a build and deployment tool. So what exactly is a build and deployment tool? Creating a software project is like putting together a puzzle. Every developer creates one piece of the puzzle. But when they save it to the source control tool, all the puzzle pieces should fit well with each other. That is, all the developers' work should work well with each other. That's called a build. And once it's built, that is, you create the software, you need to deploy it to various stages for testing purposes and then into production. So that's a build and deployment tool. The Azure DevOps Pipelines deals with the build and deployment part of it. So in this class, we're going to learn about Azure DevOps Repos. So where does Git fit in all of this? What exactly is Git version control? Previously, when we used to write code, we will save it to our local hard disk. And then there will be like a central repository which will have the version control tool. It will maintain a history of who made what changes. This central repository may be in the cloud or on another server. But with Git, every computer will have its own version control tool, along with the central repository. So now, when we are saving code, we will not only save it to our local hard disk, we will also save it to our local version control tool, that's Git, and then the remote in the cloud version control tool called Azure DevOps Repos. So Git is nothing but a local version control tool. Now many people get confused between Git and GitHub. Git is a version control tool. That's what we're going to learn. GitHub is a social media website by Microsoft where people can store their code and showcase it to the world if they want to. GitHub is like an Instagram site, but instead of pictures, you're uploading your code. In this class, we are going to learn how to use VS Code, Git, and Azure DevOps Repos to do our version control. Let us download and install VS Code and Git. To download Git, Google Git download, and you can go here to downloads Windows. Let's download the 64-bit version. So here you can select the 64-bit version. Let's click on next. I'm going to keep everything default. Now, if you want the main branch to be called master or main, it's totally up to you. I'm going to let Git decide. So I'm going to keep everything default, keep clicking next, and let's install. And let's click on finish. Now that you have installed Git, go to the Git bash or Git command file. Either of them, it doesn't matter. And over here, run these commands. The git config global user.name Patrick Washington. So in this command, you'll use your name. And in here, you will use your email address. Now, whatever you enter here, the name and email address, you can change it anytime you want by going to the git config file. So you can find your git config file in this location. If you go to your C users, to your account, open up the git config, and you will see the name and email address right here. You can change this at any time. You may not have this comes from an old setup, but you will find these. If you are in a corporate environment and if you are behind a firewall, you will specify the proxy URL right here. You see this? Your configuration will look something like this. The proxy is whatever your proxy address. Let's close this. So now that Git has been installed, let's install VS Code. Download. These pages are likely to change almost on a monthly basis. So just figure out where to download your VS Code. I'm going to keep everything as default, including add to path. I'm going to click on finish. So we have now installed Git, we have configured Git, and we have installed VS Code. Now, if you already have access to Azure DevOps Repos in your company, you can use that. Or if you want to sign up, Google Azure DevOps Repos. Let's click on this link. Sign in using a Microsoft account like Outlook.com account. You can go to Outlook.com and you can sign up for a free email address. Use that to sign in. Now, I don't need to go to the portal.azure.com. I just need Azure Repos. So once you're signed in, let's go click on Start Free. Select your country. And here it's asking you, what do you want to name your organization as? I'm going to leave it as it is. So here it's asking us to create a project. So I'm going to create a project. I'm going to create a dummy project like sample project. I'm going to leave it as private. And let's click on create project. So here you can see that we are in Azure DevOps and we are at a sample project. And on the left-hand side, you can see those three things. The Azure DevOps boards, this is the project management part of it, where you can create work items, user stories, tasks, and all. This is the project management part of it. The repos is where you will store the code, the version control part of it. And the pipelines is the CI/CD process. Of course, it has like you can also store your test plans, and artifacts is you can store your packages. In this class, we'll be learning about Azure DevOps Repos. And you can see that it already comes with the sample project. Now we can start working with the sample project, but before working on the sample project, let me show you in this repos, how will you create different repositories or different projects. This space here can contain multiple projects. And if you want to create new repos or new projects, all you have to do is go here, click on the drop down and select new repository. It's going to be a Git repository. And here, let's give another name for the repository. I'm going to call it Patrick Videos. Let's keep the add a readme selected so that there will be a file. The rest of it, we will leave it as it is. And let's click on create. So you can see that we now have another repo called Patrick Videos. We now have two repositories. So like this, you can create any number of repositories. One organization, like here, Patrick Videos 2025, can have any number of repos. Let us work on the Patrick Videos project or Patrick Videos repo. We are going to download this repo into our VS Code. Now to download this repo, there are two ways to do it. You can either clone the repo right here, or you can open up VS Code and then clone the repo from there. Let's look at it both ways so that you will understand it both ways. Next, Let us learn how to clone this repository called Patrick Videos. Make sure you are in repos. Make sure you select the repository that you want. In my case, the repository is called Patrick Videos. As you can see, we had two repositories. Select the repository that you want. And to clone it, that is, download it to your local computer, all you have to do is click on this clone button right here. Click clone. And over here, you can select from the drop down clone in VS Code. You have lots of IDEs that you can drop down to. Just click on clone in VS Code. You can select open Visual Studio Code. Now it will ask you where should it download this code. So I am specifying some folder in the C drive. Select as repository destination. And you can see that it is cloning the repository called Patrick Videos. It will ask you to sign in. Here it's asking me, do you want to open the cloned repository or add it to the current space? I want to open the cloned repository in a new window. Yes, I trust the authors. I'm going to select trust the authors. Yes, I trust the authors. And you can see that it has now cloned my repo. You see this? We have Patrick Videos project and we have the readme.md file that we saw. I'm going to close out the previous VS Code that I had opened. So we now have the repo downloaded. You can see that our repo, Patrick Videos, had readme.md file. That file has now been downloaded. So you now have the repo downloaded. Now, if things don't work out, like for example, the authentication did not appear, or maybe you're using Mac and it doesn't work the same way, there are other ways to do it. You can try out generate Git credentials and use that. Or you can also copy this URL right here. Copy this URL and in your VS Code, imagine I have not downloaded this. I'm going to close this. Use this only if the previous step does not work. Here, you can go click on clone Git repository. And then here, you can provide the URL. You don't want to click clone from GitHub. We are using Azure Repos. So here you can see that we are cloning from the URL. Once again, it will ask you to select some folder. I'm going to select project 2, select as repository destination. And here you can see that would you like to open the cloned repository? I'm going to click on open. And that will download it too. Trust the authors, yes, trust the authors. So there are two ways to clone it. You can either click on clone in VS Code, or you can come here and clone from here. So this is how you clone a repository. When you clone a repo, what happens is you're taking the repo from the cloud and we are putting it in the local computer in our VS Code. So you can see that this is the cloning process. We are taking the Patrick Videos repo from the cloud and we have downloaded it to our computer. Let's close this. Now let's go take a look at the branches. Right here. So here you can see that it has created a branch called main. For some people, it will create a branch called master, but these days it creates a branch called main. So this was created by you, so it's here under mine. If you go to all, you'll once again see only the main for now, but if you're working in a team environment, once other people start creating branches, all those branches will show up right here. So we now have a main branch in the cloud. It was created by default when you created the repo. In VS Code also, you will be on the main branch. So how do I know that you are on the main branch? If you go to the lower left-hand side corner, you can see this right here. It says main. So we are on the main branch here in the VS Code. Are there any other branches currently? No, there are no other branches. You can go click on this main branch right here. You can see that there are no other branches. There is only the main branch and you are in the main branch. So diagrammatically, it looks something like this. Your repos cloud has a main branch and your local computer also has a main branch. Your local computer Git also has a main branch. This main branch from the cloud was cloned to the local computer. Now to start working on your code, you should never ever work on the main branch. You should never work on the main branch. Whenever you want to write code, you should always create a new branch and then start working on it. Now there are two ways to create a new branch. You can either create a branch in the cloud and then fetch that branch locally, or you can create a branch locally and then push it to the cloud. Out of these, the most recommended way, that is like 99% of the time, you are supposed to create a branch in the cloud and then you are supposed to fetch it to your local. Why is that the preferred method? Because the cloud main is likely to have the latest code. So always branch from the main in the cloud and then fetch it. The only reason why you would want to create a branch locally and then later on push it is you want to try something without like not many people knowing about it. You want to try some feature, and if it works, then you want to push it right here to the cloud and let everyone else know. That's the only reason why you would create a local branch and then push it later on. But 99% of the time, you would create a branch in the cloud and then you will fetch it. But let's learn both ways of creating branches. So the first way of creating branches is to create a branch in the cloud. Now to create a branch in the cloud, because you should always work only with your branches, never code in the main, the way you do that is you can go to branches and click on new branch. This is the simplest way to create a branch. You can click on new branch and here you can give a name for the branch. Let's call it as work item 1 and it's based on the main branch. Now link to work item. This is very important. So why are you creating this branch? Why are you writing this code? So usually you specify a work item number, that is your user story number or your feature number. So one of those numbers goes in, but since we did not create any user stories or features, I'm going to leave it as blank, but I will show you how to link it later on. I'm going to click on create. So you can see that we now have a branch called work item underscore 1. Now, what does this branch contain? The branch will contain the same code that is there in main. So if I go here, you can see that it also has the README file because our main branch had the README file. If you go to branches and click on main, you can see that the main branch has a README file. So when you create a new branch based out of the main branch, it will basically kind of clone. Now you may be wondering, like if I have 1 gigabyte of code in main, if I create a branch, does it create a copy of that main branch? So will it now have 2 gigabytes of code? That's not how source control works. Source control is a very intelligent tool. So what happens is when you create a new branch, even though to the naked eye, it looks like an exact copy, behind the scene, it doesn't copy the entire code. If it has 1 gigabyte in main, when you create a new branch, it will still be 1 gigabyte. The new branch will not have any code. It will simply point to the main. And when you add new code to this branch, when you add new code or you change code, only those changes will be stored here. So you can have like 1 gigabyte in main and create 100 branches. It doesn't mean that you're going to have 100 gigabytes of code. No. Every branch will only store the changes and new files. And for the rest of them, it will simply point to main. So that's like a very smart design when it comes to source control. So we saw like one way of creating this branch. Now there's another way of creating the branch too in the cloud. You can go to boards Right here, like imagine you have a work item. I'm going to create a new work item. Let's call it as task or epic, whichever you want. And here we're going to create a task called, say, create documentation. I'm going to assign it to myself. And this is in our sample project area. The iteration is like maybe sprint 1. Now, if you don't understand the concept of work items, tasks, epics, and all, go to patrickvideos.com and check out my video on Azure DevOps for analysts and project managers. It's on Udemy. It is free for business users. It has like more than 70,000 students. Check it out. This course teaches you how to do the project management part of it. So back here, let us create this work item. You see this, the task number is 1. So like this, you can create new work items. So let me create one more. Click on save. So we now have two tasks. Now imagine I want to create a branch for one of these tasks. So I can go to this task, open it up, and here in the upper right hand side corner, click here and select new branch right here. And now you can give a name for this branch. I'm going to call it as work item underscore 2. So here you can see that we are creating a branch called work item underscore 2 and we are associating it with the task 1. I'm going to click on create. So now if you go to repos, click on branches, you will see now there are two branches. The work item 2 is associated with task 1. We haven't associated this branch with anything else, but we will do it later on. So this is how you go about creating a branch in the cloud. So now that you have created branches in the cloud, diagrammatically it looks something like this. We now have a branch in the cloud. It was created from the main branch in the cloud and it's right there in the cloud. Of course, we created another branch called work item 2, but for now, let's work with work item 1. So now that we have this branch, how do we fetch this branch or download this branch to our local so that we can work locally on it? This is how you go and fetch the branch. In your VS Code, go here to the lower left-hand side corner. Make sure you never write code if the branch here is main. It should always be some other branch. That's where you have to write your code. So click on this main and you will notice that that branch is not available right here. The one that we created in the cloud, it's not available right here. So we now need to fetch that branch. So how do we do that? Go to the source control, right here, the source control button. Click on this more actions and then click on fetch. Fetch will fetch the branches. Now it will not download the branch. It will fetch it. That is, it will show you what branches are available in the cloud. That's a very important concept. It will not download it. It will only show you what branches are available in the cloud. Let's click on fetch. Now it's asking a question, would you like Visual Studio Code to periodically run git fetch? I can say like no. It doesn't really matter. You can say yes too. It will periodically run it. If there are any new branches, it will show up. So now that we have run fetch, let's go back to main and see. Click on main. So you see that it is showing me the two new branches that we created, work item 1 and work item 2. It has not fully downloaded the code. It's only showing you those branches. Now, if you want to work on work item 1, the way you do that is you select this work item 1 remote branch right here. When you select this, then it will go and download the code. You can see this right here. It will go and download the code and you are now in work item 1 branch. So if you go back to the Explorer right here, you will see that it's the same project in the main. How do I know that I'm in a branch? Because here in the lower left-hand side, it says work item underscore one. So we have now downloaded the work item one branch and we are going to be working on it. So diagrammatically, it now looks like this. We have fetched the branch and then we have switched to that branch, thereby downloading the branch. So now in our local computer, we now have the work item underscore one branch. So we have this right here. Now that we learned how to create a branch in the cloud and then fetch it to the local and start working on it, I told you there is a rare case where you may want to create a branch locally and then push that branch to the remote. So how does that work? Let's take a quick look at it, even though I don't suggest this method at all. So to create a local branch and then push that local branch to the remote, the way you do that is go to your branch right here on the lower left-hand side corner. And here you can select create a new branch from. And here you can select, hey, I want to create a new branch from like either the work item one branch or the main branch. I'm going to just select the main branch right here. Give a name for the new branch. Let's call it work item underscore 3 created locally. Created local. And I'm going to click on enter. So here you can see that we have a new branch called work item underscore 3 created local, that is created locally. Now this branch is available only in the local Git. That means it now has a branch right here in the local computer, local Git called work item 3. It is not available right here. You can go refresh the branches. You can click on all. You can see that it is not available right here in the cloud. Now to push it, you can go to source control and here, and you can select publish branch right here. You can either click here or you can click on the small icon right here called publish branch. So let's go click on publish branch. So this will publish or push the branch from local to the remote cloud. Let's go here and refresh. You will see that branch right here. See that? We now have a third branch, work item 3, created locally, but it's now in the cloud. So use this rarely because you want to create branches out of the main in the cloud because that's likely to contain the most recent code. Now here, let's go back to work item 1. That was the branch we were working on. So to switch between branches, click here and you can select any branch you want to work on. So here you can see that I was working on work item 1. I'm going to switch back to work item 1. So you want to select these branches right here. These are there in your local. These are all like in the cloud. The cloud has work item 1, work item 2 and work item 3. But locally, we only have work item 1, which we had previously fetched, and work item 3, which we created. We don't have the work item 2 locally yet, but we don't really care about it for now. Let's go select work item 1. So that means we are now in work item 1, and we are going to start working on this work item 1 branch. So now that we have learned how to create branches, make sure you are in the work item 1 branch. Now let's learn how to work on this branch. So let's go and create a few folders and files right here. So in my project, I'm going to create a folder. Let's call it day 1. And in this, I'm going to create a file, file1.txt. And here we're going to just write some comments, some code here. So we have created a folder and a file. Let me make the text a bit bigger. Go into settings, mouse. I'm going to select this. It will zoom the editor if I use the mouse scroll button along with the control key. So now you can see that I'm able to scroll. So we have a folder with a file right here. Let's create another file. File2.txt. More code here. So we now have a folder with 2 files. Now what shall we do with this? Let's go to the source control menu right here. You see this? It is showing you the changes. There are 2 files. Both of them have this U symbol. That means they are not tracked by Git. They are not tracked by Git. So let us learn how to track them or how to do version control. So to do that, first you have to give some kind of a message. That's a requirement. That is, why are you saving this code? So let's give a message like learning Git, my first save, something like that, right? Now here in this drop down, you will see these choices. So do not click on commit, just click on this drop down and you'll see these choices. What exactly are these choices? Let's take a look. You see this? Commit, commit and push, commit and sync. We will come to commit and amend much later. Let's first take a look at commit, commit and push, and commit and sync. Whenever you make any changes to code, there are 3 places you need to save this code. You first need to save to the local hard disk, then save it to the local branch, that is your local Git branch, your local version control, and then save it to the remote branch. Let's take a look. The first is save to the local hard disk. That's pretty simple. You just have to go to File, and if you click on Save All, you can see that both these files will be saved. So let me do that. File, Save All. Now this will save it to the local hard disk. Now saving to the local hard disk does not mean it has been saved to the local Git version control. Remember this picture? You're working on your computer in VS Code. This is your local computer. Your local computer also has a Git version control like this right here. And then it has the remote repository. So when you click on File Save All, you're only saving it to the local computer. You are yet to save it to the local Git version control or to the remote cloud. You haven't done these 2. To do those 2, you have these 3 choices, and we're going to learn about these 3 choices. If you click on the button commit, it will only save it to the local version control or your local branch, like right here. If you click on the button commit and push, it will save it to your local branch and push the same changes to the remote branch. If you say commit and sync, it will save it to your local branch. It will pull from the remote branch to the local branch and push from the local branch to the remote branch. Let us look at all these 3 scenarios. Now the number 1 point you need to remember is whenever you do commit and push, commit and sync, it will only work with the corresponding branch in the remote. It will not work with another branch in the remote. That is, you cannot save it to one branch right here and push it to the main branch in the remote. You cannot commit to one branch right here and to push to another branch in the remote. No. Whenever you say commit and push, it will save it to the local branch. Whatever branch it is, it will save the changes to the same branch that is available in the remote. It's the same thing with sync. So let's look at each and every scenario. So first, let us do the simple one, commit and push. That is, save it to the local branch and push it to the corresponding branch in the remote. So over here, I've given some kind of a message. Click on this drop down and say select and push. When we say select and push, it's going to save it to your local branch and then push it to the remote right here. Now it's asking a question, would you like to stage all your changes? Say yes for now. I will later on explain what is staging. Say yes. And you can see that it's done. Now how do I verify it's done? Well, the files are no longer here. You can see that it's no longer here. That means rest assured it has been committed to the local branch. It has been committed to the local branch. But you can verify Hey, did it push it to the remote branch? Let's go verify that. Let's go to work item 1. And you see that you have the day 1, file 1 and file 2. If it doesn't show up, just make sure you refresh it. Sometimes you need to refresh it for it to show up. Or you can go to branches once again and then select this branch. It will go get the latest. So this is how the commit and push works. It committed to the local work item 1 branch and pushed it to the remote work item 1 branch. You will not see this day 1, file 2 text in other branches. Here you can see that it's in work item 1 branch, but if I click on this and select the main branch doesn't have it. Select this and select work item 2 branch, it doesn't have it. Work item 3 branch doesn't have it, because right here we are only working on work item 1. So it will only push to the corresponding branch in the remote. So we have now learned about commit and push. So what is the use of commit and sync? When would you use this? Let's take a look.